Welcome into Believe in Commanders podcast. Scott Jackson and Anthony Armstrong. And I guess, Anthony, are we calling this the Holdout edition?
Yeah, the easy podcast topic, easy title right there. I mean, I even had to add a chalkboard to my props back here. I feel like Woody Page. Terry Holdout day one, man. Day one to report. He's not there, but you can like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on what's going on with Terry McLaurin and this holdout over here with me and Scott Jackson on Believe in Commanders. We didn't think we were going to get to this point. I know I didn't. I thought he was going to get signed and come sprinting in, but I guess they had other plans.
Well, I don't even know if I thought he was going to get signed by today. I just thought he wouldn't hold out. And you know what? Maybe they thought he wouldn't hold out, and that's exactly why he and his agent said, hey, let's hold out. I mean, $50,000 a day is no joke, no matter how much money you're making, as you know. And he, of course, could recuperate that in the next deal, although they say you're not allowed to get it back. But oftentimes players, you know, they make sure they get it back, so to speak. But it's just it's the most un-Terry McLaurin type thing to do. And maybe, again, this is how he feels. I mean, he was very honest, you know, over a week ago about his emotions and where he felt about this thing. And maybe he thinks this is really the only way to get through to the franchise that, hey, I'm serious about what I'm asking for.
Sometimes you got to put it on the table. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? You just got to show them that, hey, this is what it's going to be. This is how I truly feel about it. And he has done everything, quote unquote, the right way. And I can tell you this much. Playing this game and playing that game in the NFL, doing everything the right way, it ain't going to always go. It's not going to have everything end up in your favor at the end. You can still get cut. You will still get traded. The coach will tell you everything to your face. Hey, man, this season you're going to be the guy. But then plans change. You know, things happen and they go the other direction. So Terry's probably right in doing this and taking this stance and just showing, hey, this is how I feel. I want to be valued, and I want you to, you know, reciprocate and pay me this way. So he's making the right move. He's just going to keep us tense and give us something to talk about over the next, hopefully, you know, maybe 72 hours at tops.
What's crazy is if you watch the Dan Quinn and Adam Peters presser, which I did, you know, hours before, you know, the report broke at 4:00, you know, they admitted they weren't sure. You know, Adam said he didn't know. You know, they didn't talk about it. They assumed, you know, everybody report. And then he was very positive about that they've talked recently, he and, you know, Terry's representation and representatives, I should say, and that, you know, they felt like, you know, things were going in the right direction and, you know, it said all the right things about Terry, the player, et cetera, et cetera. But clearly from Terry's end of it, that's not what they're feeling, right? Like they're not feeling there's progress made. I mean, I don't think you hold out if you're like on the cusp of a deal, right? Like I don't think that's something you start camp off. You're like, oh, we're just, you know, a few little things away from getting this deal done. I think this is like, no, we're not even in the same area code. I'm going to prove a point to you. I'm not showing up until you come closer.
Yeah, and
that's my take.
You got to be right. I feel what you're thinking. And when you've heard different ranges of, you know, some receivers that you would compare Terry to, or, you know, they may be using as comparisons to try to figure out a value. I mean, it ranges from 28 to 33 million. Like that's a big amount. That's a large swing right there. And, you know, you'd have to think that the player feels like they want to be on the higher side of those things. And maybe the team wants to be actually out of that window. And, you know, a large discrepancy like that, it can really kill a deal. It really can. I mean, real estate is similar in a sense. And sometimes it gets down to the nitty gritty details where you're like, guys, let's not throw it away over this. But if it's something large and it's going to cause Terry to want to stay away, I mean, hey, I've advised buyers to back out of deals and get out of it if it just doesn't feel right for him. And maybe that's where he feels right now.
Yeah, and look, we know this. Like, this is not good for the Commanders. You know, they could spin it anyway. It's early in camp, and that's fine. It's true. It's early. But if this drags out, you know this. You've seen this all the time. We saw it last year in San Francisco. They had multiple issues, right? It wasn't just your Brandon Ayuk. I mean, they had Trent going on, and you know there were a lot of other things going on there, and it didn't end well, obviously, with their season. People get hurt. You know, you miss time. It just like the Eagles to me have had the perfect offseason, and it makes me sick to say it. You know, like throwing up in my mouth. But here's the Super Bowl champs. Yeah, they lost some people. They chose who they wanted to lose, right? I mean, I don't think they lost anybody that they really were like fighting hard for. I think they Zach Bond, they paid him. They trade Gardner Johnson. You know, they picked the people they wanted to move on from. and they've had this kind of this quiet, low key approach to it. Nothing crazy, and everything's kind of in line. The Cowboys are a freaking 3-ring circus, as you know. Jerry Jones is worried about people getting hit by cars, so that's why he's not paying them now, apparently. And, the Commanders, like, they've done a nice job of, like, saying all the right things about Terry. And, until last week, Terry hadn't said a word and then did. But this, these things are not good. These are not good things. You want these to end as quickly as possible. And a lot of times, as guys that hold out, when they do eventually get in, there's the concern about injury. There's a lot of things that can happen. So anyway, hopefully it gets resolved quickly, but this is not the kind of foot you want to start off on when you're talking about, hey, are we as good as Philadelphia, or can we beat Philadelphia? And look, they got a bunch of weeks into the season to find out, because they don't play them until the last, 2 of the last 3 weekends, for goodness sakes.
Right. Yeah, no, it is something that you didn't want to come into camp with this distraction. You didn't want to have that guy, especially that, that cornerstone. I mean, that guy, Terry McLaurin's going to hold a high regard in a lot of fans' mind from years and years to come. Like, it's going to be Santana Moss, Art Monk, Terry McLaurin. Like, it's going to be in that same breath. So to have this, happen, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. But I do also think that the fans are going to say, hey, we're going to trust in AP. They're definitely saying the right things about wanting to have him in the building. One thing that I am confident about, because I watched the press conference as well, is Dan Quinn's ability to have that ramp up period for the first few days to get the players ready and acclimated before they go full speed in training camp. So it worked out well last year, where they start out with some, shorter field situations, red zone and things where, yes, I do want Terry McLaurin to get all those reps. But if he has to miss a couple of days in the ramp-up period, I'm okay with it. And I do trust that they're going to have a ramp-up period for him individually whenever he does report to camp.
Believe in Commanders podcast, part of the Believe Network. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong here with you. And that's a good point. I mean, it was funny because the press conference starts with Dan Quinn makes the opening statement. And I don't know, I mean, you're a former player. You could probably speak better to me, and I'm just a guy. But, man, every time Dan Quinn starts getting really football-y, I mean, you just like, man, I see why the players love him. Like, I see why people like Bobby Wagner, like, yeah, this is the guy I want to come back and play for. It's why Von Miller wants to come here, because he's heard about this. And Von Miller saying that he also picked the best team with the best quarterback, which I thought was cool. So, like, you can get it. But, like, Dan Quinn, the way he communicates is phenomenal. I mean, it is just so, like, it's a smart guy, but it's also very, grassroots football-y, right? And he just hits all the right notes. And you can see, as a communicator, you got to love this guy and the leadership ability. It's clear why so many people are so high on him, even when, maybe the rest of the league or the fans didn't really think much about it after the loss.
Right.
The Falcons are like, this guy, whatever. He's not a head coach again. And then, like, you understand now, seeing this a year going into year 2, why Kyle Shanahan said, no, this guy, like, he understands culture better than anybody. And it's just so obvious, even in the press conferences.
100%. I mean, I'm sitting there listening, and I'm like wanting to sit up straight, like I'm in the meeting room with him myself. I feel you on that. When you look at, I go back to that loss, against the New England, but the time between then and coming into last year, Dan Quinn has grown so much as a man, as a leader. I think he took those lessons and he probably looked back at that tape and rethought of every single decision that was made. And that spilled into how he's leading this team now. And we've talked about it before. I love the way the staff is built out, that he just gets to focus on leading this team and getting the most out of every single player on the roster. So if you don't have 17 out there, he's going to have the next person prepared, but obviously this team is going to be elevating so much better if you get 17 out there. But Dan Quinn, if anybody can lead a team through that, obviously that's going to be the elephant in the room. Where's Terry?
Yeah.
Dan Quinn can do it. I think he's the guy to get them through that. They have the right veterans in the building to say, hey, everybody, we're good. When Terry shows up, we're going to just, hopefully hit the ground running, as he shows up.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right. He nails it. And, like we've talked about a bunch of times throughout this offseason, the problem, and I think, like, whether you think Terry McLaurin is, on the same page as, name a number one receiver on a team, what have you, or number one, like, whether you think he's Jamar Chase or in that level or Justin Jefferson is irrelevant in this sense that, yeah, okay, we get that. Where's he, DK Metcalf? Is he Garrett Wilson, whatever. But for this team and for this season that they have worked for and prepared for and built for, like, you can't put yourself in a situation where, and I don't think he would hold out the whole season, but if he misses the majority of training camp just to prove a point, if they can't get to a contract, I don't think that's good. I don't think, but I also didn't think he was going to hold out today, that he would, let it go through the season and, maybe show up, just in time to get his service year. I don't think he would take it that far, but like, why try to find out? It's just because you don't have another plan. You don't have another number one sitting by, there's not a guy on the street that you can say, like Amari Cooper has had a hell of a career, but I don't know if you can just say, "Hey, Amari Cooper, come on in. You're a 1A or whatever, 1B next to Debo, and we're just going to roll without Terry." Yeah, I don't think you can play that game for the Commanders.
No, that's not a game that I want to have to report on either. I can't lie. Like that makes you have to really start digging deep to see who's really out there, right? I mean, now you got to really start to think, okay, what are you going to get out of Michael Gallup? He's coming off of retiring from football. Has he gotten his mentality back? Has he gotten the confidence back to actually get out there and perform at the level he did in the past? So, I mean, hey, at his best, when he was at his best, yeah, Michael Gallup can hold it down for you. He can hold it down for this team in the absence of Terry McLaurin. Noah Brown, what's he going to look like as well? He showed some agility. I know you love seeing the training film, but he released a video just before training camp showing him doing some agility. So he looks to be back to full form. So what's he going to do? Who's going to step up in the role, in this absence? I mean, honestly, this is what the opportunity is. And this is me being the underdog that I was when I made it on the roster. Yeah, I get it that, we're missing our number one and we want to have Terry back, but anybody else on that roster, this is your opportunity to step up. This is your opportunity to make a couple plays and maybe start getting coaches in your favor when it comes down to making the decisions later on in training camp. I mean, that's the nature of this game. So we'll see what happens. Who really wants to step up?
That's a great point. And again, hopefully they don't have to live that life, right? Because they are better with him and with Debo, that combination. We've been talking about it all offseason. We're excited to see it. We want to see it at some point. So now the business has to take place. I do want to get your thoughts on the Von Miller signing, because we haven't spoken since Von Miller. Last one I did was with Ian Rappaport. And it was right after Von Miller dropped. I mean, if anything, to me, like I said to him, we'll see what Von brings to the table. I think he's still got juice in the tank, but man, it just tells you how different things are a year ago, 2 years ago, right? That a guy like Von Miller, who has options, says, I'm coming there. They get the best quarterback with the best team. That's my formula.
Man, number one, that line that he dropped, that is so strategic. He didn't say that on accident. He's saying, hey, this is the best quarterback that's out here. He's trying to lift up his young quarterback and start building that rapport with him and show that, hey, I've seen you operate. And he's been on a team with the NFL MVP. So he's seen really good quarterback play. And to say that about Jaden, that's big for Von Miller. Very smart. And I think that number one, that speaks to his leadership. Right? People are going to respect him. These kids that are on this roster are looking over and they're like, that's him. That is the Von Miller. Okay. So he's walking around with an aura, with a glow about him right now. So that's how Von Miller is going to lead in that locker room, getting young guys on board. The defense is going to be tight between Bobby, Luvu, Payne, now Von Miller. The defense has to be pristine. They have to be operating like an IndyCar engine. You know what I mean? Just going beautifully. Because there's so much good that can come from this. And lastly, I think it's a late season signing. Right? This is your closer. This is your Mariano Rivera. This is, hey, third and forever. We need a stop. We need you to get to the quarterback, and who you gonna put out there? It's 24. And it's not to lock down a receiver. It's to beat the tackle across from him and get a big strip sack so FedEx Field can go crazy.
Isn't it wild to think that Von Miller in the same draft as Ryan Kerrigan, still playing. Ryan Kerrigan's not coaching Von Miller, on that staff now. It's quite a career for Von Miller. But look, I mean, last year, the sack numbers I think were 6 in Buffalo, but his pressure, win percentage, all these analytics we get thrown at now with defensive linemen were incredible. And then in the playoffs, I mean, he took it to another level, and he was only playing about a third of the snaps in Buffalo. And I'll be interested to see it. I'm sure, again, DQ's been great at, as with the veterans. Zach Ertz has been bragging about this. Bobby Wagner's been bragging about this, how he handles the veteran players, knowing when to rest them, how to ramp them up. And that's going to be really cool to see how they handle that. And, I think, his body and his production will probably tell them whether or not they can push it a little bit more than, say, Buffalo did last year, or if they kind of have to keep them on that pitch count.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful the weather. It's not going to get as cold up there in Buffalo. And I know how those old bones get, right? When you sitting around for a while, once these knees have locked up, baby, they done. We're not warming back up. So I get it. Vaughn is like, look, baby, it's a little bit too chilly. But I love the fact that he could be out there for a third of the down. I don't need him to be out there all the time. I don't need him over there fighting off runs. He don't need to be out there on first down. But what he's going to do, he's going to draw attention. The right tackle or left tackle that week is going to know who the hell they going against, and they're going to be nervous about it. And it's just going to be that little extra inkling that's in your head when you look across and you see the guy with the glasses, and he's a perennial Hall of Famer, all pro. He's going to go and get a gold jacket at some point. Do you want to be on his list of people he's beaten for a sack? That's what they're thinking every single time they line up across from him. I think that's a little extra checkbox in the Commanders' favor.
Well, and I love it for the young kids on this team, the offensive linemen, right? I mean, like a guy like Connerly, here's year one. You got Von Miller, you can line up against DeLuvu, whoever they want to roll at you. But the fact that you can go against Von Miller your rookie season, man, that is so valuable, right?
It can either ruin you, Scott, or it can temper you, right? Because at least it's in practice, and he can beat you and then teach you and then tell you what happened. But if
no posters in practice.
Yeah, you know what I mean? There's no posters in practice. So if it was week 1 and you're looking across from Von Miller and you're like, oh, Lord, baby, it's going to be a long Sunday because you better pack a lunch. Yeah,
no doubt. Final one for you. We were talking about the importance of, some of these veterans that we mentioned. But, man, I'll tell you, the guy that, if this whole Terry thing wasn't going on, that I'd be talking about probably every day on the radio that I'm interested to see. And again, you're not going to see it all in day one, but as time goes on, is Marshon Lattimore. I mean, this was a big addition midseason last year. We never really got to see the full version of him because of injuries and the hamstrings, but he's had a full, healthy offseason, they're telling us. I'm excited to see it because I think he's a guy that could be such a huge upgrade to what this defense is able to do.
I think that if you're able to get him to be in a position where you can just trust that he's going to lock down one side, he's going to lock down one receiver, it just gives you so much more flexibility with how you can unroll the rest of that defense. It can, if you're getting to add an extra rusher and know that your secondary can lock up, now you can really unleash Von Miller and Frankie Louvu. You can do a lot of things up front. So having that tight secondary, that tight coverage back there, especially getting Marshon Lattimore playing the way that he can play, being healthy, is really going to help elevate this defense. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously everybody's excited to see Jaden Daniels, and it would have year 2 has ahead. We'd just like to be with Terry McLaurin here as sooner rather than later, for sure. Believe in Commanders podcast, part of the Believe Network. Scott Jackson, Anthony Armstrong again. Comment, follow us wherever you find your better podcast. Well, I will keep an eye on this thing. I mean, you have the sign up there. Apparently, nobody's seen it yet, but it says clearly "Sign Terry." Right? Is that what it says?
Yeah, one says sign Terry, and the other one says Terry Holdout day 1. So I would like to I'd like to get rid of both of them. I would love for that to happen.
Well, we're going to look forward to the ceremony. Whenever that day comes, it'll be a podcast ceremony to get rid of both of those things, Anthony.
There it is.
Do that.
There
All
it
right.
is.
There you go. All right, well, friend. Until next time, thanks for joining us here. Believe in Commanders podcast. Anthony Armstrong, Scott Jackson. We'll talk to you very soon as training camp rolls on here, part of the Believe Network.
Be good.